Hi there, this is Jennifer Clough. It's April 2008 and I'm doing this video to talk about how to line up your head joint on your flute when you're assembling the flute. Now, one of the problems of the flute is that the two long rods that hold the keys on have so much weight on them that they tend to make the flute roll backwards. And if you want to ever prove this to yourself, just hold the flute sort of so that it's not catching on anything, and keep the keys level with the ceiling. Then slowly notice how the weight falls to the back. Okay? You'll notice that the flute tips backwards. Another way to show this is to put your finger in each end with the head joint off. Put the keys parallel to the ceiling and then let the weight of the rods pull the flute over. And you can clearly see that the weight has a tendency to pull the flute back. Now what happens when the flute is pulled back like this, that you spend a lot of excess energy trying to keep the flute level with your right hand, which can lead to, pain in your right hand or in your forearm, and with your left hand. Okay? So, let's start at the beginning. Most flute books tell you to line up the embouchure hole with the center of the keys. And you're supposed to go something like this. Okay. Now, when you play like that, and you have a little flat chin or really thin lips, like I do, you end up, over time, getting a better and better tone by changing how much of your chin covers the embouchure plate, and the keys are pointing backwards. This gives you a maximum roll in the hands. The flute's weight is constantly rolling in. So this is the problem. I just came back from adjudicating a whole bunch of flute players for 3 days, and I saw this only maybe in 2 to 3 players out of every 10. But in high school, this is a problem because it's pretty common. So the keys are slanting backwards. You'll even see that in professional flutists. The keys are not often, but sometimes. The keys are slanting backwards, and then the player cocks their wrist like this in order to try and gain some control over the flute rolling backwards. And this shortens all the tendons in the arm that are supposed to be helping you move your fingers, and it only allows you to use the tendons in your hand to move your fingers. So this is a problem. Now, someone who's gone crazy the other way, and they have their keys rolling forward because they're trying really hard not to have their keys facing backwards, they end up with cocking the wrist in the left hand. Okay, so let me see if I can do that. Okay, so I'm rolling my keys forward because I think that's going to help straighten this wrist. Oh, that's hilarious. But you end up cocking this wrist. And again, instead of using these tendons to move your fingers, which is nice and fluid, you end up cutting them off at the wrist and only using the tendons in your hand to move the fingers, which is a lot of work for those tendons. Okay, so let's start you off. If you've always lined up center to center, and you find that your keys are tilting backwards, okay, get the keys to where you need them to be, so they're parallel to the ceiling, and then get your mouthpiece where it needs to be so that you're comfortable the way you play, like you're reading a bulletin board and you're putting your flute up. There, perfectly comfortable. Okay? And you will notice that these rods, rather than being at 3 o'clock, which is parallel that way, these rods might be slightly higher, like 2 o'clock on the clock, or even 1 o'clock. But I certainly would never advocate putting the rods on top. Okay, because this arm would have to be way up in the air, and this arm would have to be crunched way underneath. And I would never advocate putting the rods on the bottom, because this arm becomes cocked at the wrist, and this one has to be up in the air. Actually, I've seen professional flute players who play like that. Okay, which is great if they never have an injury, but if they have an injury, it is so game over. So that's just my advice for you. Roger Mathers says that 25% of people will line up, roughly estimating, the center with the center, okay? And 75% of people will be somewhat inward of center. So set your keys parallel to the ceiling, feel for the balance of the rods so that they don't pull the flute over, Okay, so they might be just slightly up from perfectly parallel. Your keys can be slightly tilted forward. It's up to you. Okay, and then you should be able to hold the flute steady with just your chin, the side of your index finger, the thumb, which is, for many people now, they're agreeing it should be on the back more than underneath. So on the back, pushing forward. Okay, and then you can add your pinky if you absolutely need to. But you should be able to, without the rods pulling inward. Okay, that's just a starter, and maybe I'll remake this video later, but that's to get you started. Okay, bye, see you.